This battle is not going to end soon. The survived soldiers will bury their dead comrades and pick up the cartridges and incendiary bottles and will be getting out of the trap for 3 days. They will follow their commander and continue to fight, protecting their homeland from the German invaders. And the one who led his fighters to victory, who did not let them lose their heart, will celebrate the Victory Day in Austria. Major Gabdullin received the stars of the Hero of the Soviet Union, the Order of Lenin, the Red Banner, the Red Star, World War of the First Degree. Malik, get up! Malik, son! Mother, Aliya Ospanovna. He saw her in his dream, and every time Malik went to a mortal fight or was freezing in a trench, waiting for an attack, or sitting at night by the fire when he was looking at the black sky, he was thinking about what will happen tomorrow. What will he face, life or death? He remembered his mother's delicate little hands that always had calluses. Malik's father, Gabdullah Yelemesov, was a very educated man. He knew Arabic script and taught his son Malik. Mother Aliya looked after children. It was a difficult time, but like other Kazakh women, she never complained about her fate and bravely went through all the difficulties. He was born in 1915 in the village of Koysalgan, Zerenda district, Kokhchetau region. From the very childhood, he saw the beauty of this land, and that's why he loved the nature. He could spend hours walking through forests and mountains, looking at the tops of trees covered with snow or at frozen lakes. They seemed to him incredibly beautiful at any time of the year and contributed to his love for literature, poetry, and education. As an adult, he always used to say that he did not remember his birthday. Usually, that was the day of the first snow. He was a child when Kazakhstan faced the first wave of famine, and it was a period when little Malik found out what deprivation, grief, loss were. His beloved brothers and sisters were dying of hunger and diseases one after another. The parents were inconsolable over their death. 11 children. Malik was the only one who survived. Apparently, the parents did not eat. They used to give their food to him. They wanted him to stay alive. And my grandfather was happy that at least one son grew up and became a worthy person. He was very proud that he had such a son. Life in constant hardships affected his health. Malik was often sick, quickly tired. Looking at this short man, it was difficult to imagine that he has a spirit of a true Kazakh batar, brave and courageous. He stubbornly clung to life, despite the fact that hundreds of his peers died from the cold. Moreover, he did not want to simply exist. He wanted to learn, develop, and go forward. Malik has finished a 2-year school in the village, and then he entered the Kokhchetau Commune School. He was a very diligent, highly capable student. Soviet power established at that time in the country was growing stronger. Young people like Gabdullin were under scrutiny because main hopes were put on those children from average families to build a communist society. Malik Gabdullin was sent to the Republican rally of pioneers in the capital, in Almaty. And when Dad went to university, he was immediately enrolled, and there was no place in a dormitory. That was an interesting case, and he thought that he should go around the dormitory. Maybe he will meet someone from his village. He walked and got into one room. He saw 4 beds there, a table, students, and he greeted them and said, "I just enrolled, but there is no place in the dormitory." And one young man asked him, "Do you have a good handwriting?" He said, yeah, it's okay. The student asked to write something. My dad had a small handwriting, but everything was readable. And the student said, you know, that I write poems, but I have ugly handwriting. You will rewrite them. And for this, you will share the bed with me. And that was the future poet of Kazakhstan, Abdilda Tajibayev. In Almaty, Gabdullin wrote his first works, and he enjoyed visiting the city publishing house. After all, the publication process of newspapers and magazines are so interesting. Sakan Seyfullin, Beymbet Maylin, Ilyas Jansugurov. These people were the real idols of the young Malik Gabdullin. So when he had the opportunity to meet them personally, he did not miss it. Moreover, he tried to meet with them as often as possible. He consulted with them, shared his thoughts, creative ideas. Back then, he did not know what a tragic fate his mentors will have, and that the description "student of the enemies of the people" will follow him for many years. Only few people know about that period of the life of the hero. In the terrible year of 1937, when the best people of the country were thrown into the dungeons of the NKVD, Gabdullin was also repeatedly interrogated. But he did not renounce his ideals, and he refused to testify against his teachers. He had to pay for it. He was expelled from the party, and that meant he must forget about the prospects and career growth. And you know, that officer who interrogated him, they met in Moscow during the war. Our dad was a political instructor. He was in all these military organizations. He met him, and that officer didn't recognize him. My dad came up to him and asked if he can help. The officer said, yes, I might be excluded from the party. And now I'm trying to prove that I'm not like that. And my dad helped him, and he was not excluded from the party. Everything was okay again. And then he told him, do you remember? I was the one who you thought was an enemy of the people. Love helped Malik to go through the hard times. After returning back to his village, he met tender and fragile Jeanne Bope. She was working as a teacher in a local school. She's warmed his heart. One day Malik thought that he could not live without this girl. They had a wedding. In order to somehow survive and provide for the small family of the two people, Gabdullin found a job of a railroad worker 1 year after a war began. Gabdullin went to the war as a volunteer, becoming a member of the 316th Rifle Division of General Ivan Panfilov. Leaving for the war, Malik warmly said goodbye to his beloved Jeanne Bope. By that time, she was pregnant with their first child, and he told her to take care of herself and asked to name their son Maidan, which means battlefield. Jeanne Bope made what she has promised to her beloved and named the child Maidan, even though it was a girl. Because Malik could get along with anybody during the war in his division, he was appointed as a political commissar. The village of Shirayevo, near Moscow, the Germans started the offensive. The regiment of Gabdullin must confront the most powerful, well-armed divisions, tank and artillery units of the Nazis. These were terrible, bloody battles. The brave soldiers will always remember these moments when he saw fellow soldiers being killed by the Nazi bullets, those with whom he shared bread yesterday. After the war, he described all that he had to go through in his works. But he didn't like telling about the nightmares of war. It was too hard and painful. Moscow. The city played a tremendous role in the fate of Malik Gabdullin. He risked his life defending the capital of the Soviet Union. His friends were killed under its walls, defending Moscow from the Nazis. And in the city, Gabdullin was destined to meet a woman who would be everything for him: best friend, love, and support. For her, he left Jeanne Bope. He did many brave things for her, both at war and in peacetime. In August 1943, the hero of the Soviet Union, Major Malik Gabdullin, came home for a visit. This unique archival footage shows how Kazakh residents meet their hero with flowers and ovations. Thousands of people went to the streets to see him, greet him. Malik traveled the whole republic by train. He has visited his hometown, Kokshetau, sat at one Dastarkhan with Aksakals, talking about what he had seen at the war. He's returned to the front line and stayed there until the day of victory. At that moment, Malik Gabdullin was in Austria. And in 1946, he returned to his favorite city of Almaty together with his wife Naziya, who soon gave birth to Malik's son, Batal. They took also Malik's daughter from the first marriage, Maidan, so that she could live with her father, study in a good school. The war finished and peaceful life began, but again, it was still difficult. It was necessary to face global challenges, raise the country, develop the economy and science. And Gabdullin began to work in a new Academy of Sciences with Kanish Satpayev. Gabdullin began to deeply study Kazakh oral folk art and epics. In 1947, he received the title of Candidate of Philological Sciences for the research of the Kazakh tale of Koblandi Batyr. He got a degree of Doctor of Philological Sciences in 1959. In the late 50s, the oral folk art of the Kazakhs was under discussions. Numerous articles appeared in the Soviet press that these works should be banned, like remnants of the past, returning the people to the period of the feudalism. This topic was discussed at the special meetings. Malik Gabdullin, as a connoisseur of folk art, could not stand aside and did his best to defend our cultural heritage.
Этот человек представлял собой целую эпоху казахской жизни, культуры. Он еще до войны был аспирантом.
That is, this person represented a whole epoch of Kazakh life and culture. He was a graduate student before the war. He suffered greatly when the epic Koblandi Batyr was considered to be against people. Well, in general, it was in the 50s, during the second wave of political repression, and when our epics were recognized as anti-popular, anti-Russian. It was considered that these works belonged to the feudal Kazakh elite. The approach was wild and class-based, and then he suffered because of this.
Подход был сугубо такой дикий классовый подход.
He was never afraid to go against the system. For many years, he was friends with Yermakhan Bekmahanov, a famous historian, author of a book about Kenasari Khan. Then, this topic was banned. The book was criticized. Bekmahanov was arrested and sent to camps, accused of bourgeois ultranationalism.
Malik очень поддерживал Ермухана.
Malik supported Yermakhan. When he was sent to prison, he was very worried. You know, he spoke with me. He was not afraid of how others bypassed me. He always asked Aunt Galia, "How are you?" I never complained, and when I entered Caspian University when I was 54, because he was our director. And I have seen many directors, Zhumabekov, Kashimov, and Torlybekov, and I must say, he was the most democratic rector of Caspi. First, he did a lot to open the academic council. Thanks to him, we all defended our thesis. He was chairman of the academic council. He supported everyone. I have not heard a single complaint about Malik. Everyone was very pleased with his work.
И Толыбекова, и надо сказать, это был самый демократичный ректор Каспий.
Former students of Malik Gabdullin still remember him with warmth and gratitude. He tried to help everyone, find kind, supportive words. Many were surprised how a war hero, who saw all the severity and horror of the war years, could have kept such gentleness and purity of soul.
Знаете, вот у папы какая-то была такая привычка, он всем...
You know, Dad had a habit. He used to help everyone who addressed him. So I remember the door in our apartment never closed, especially in July or August. Some people needed to go to the hospital. Some couldn't buy a train ticket. Some people had work problems. He had the door open. He was like deputy of the Supreme Council. He helped these people, did not refuse anyone. The kindest person. And of course, Malik wrote that his talent as a writer woke up after the war. My frontline friends, Golden Star, frontline essays, weekdays of war, about friends, comrades, terrible years. In those works, he tells about the difficult things using a simple language. He wrote about war, about friendship, about fear, about pain, about losses, about the feelings that an ordinary young man experiences during his lifetime. And the military generation experienced that at a very young age, when they were supposed to think about love and happiness, and not about death and tears. It was a new year, 1973. As always, on this day, the whole family gathered together. He loved this holiday so much. When his family and friends were around that year, it was decided to celebrate at his daughter Maidan's house.
Мы 31 декабря встречали Новый год здесь, вот в этой комнате.
On December the 31st, we celebrated the New Year in this room, in this apartment, and he was here, as well as the mother-in-law, and Batal, with his wife and my brothers. On December the 31st at 12 o'clock, we celebrated the New Year here. Then we ate and talked. After that, he said, "I feel bad. I will probably go home." Well, then Batal sent them home. January 1st was a day off, and the mother-in-law told me that on January the 2nd in the morning he went to work. Then he went to the hospital. There he got an electrocardiogram. Doctor said that it was okay, that he needs to lie down, so he went back to work. Later, after lunch, he went home. On this day, around 5 o'clock, he had a heart failure.
У него так произошел разрыв сердца.
On this calendar, the date of death is marked by the hand of his wife, and this day has become the beginning of her end. His death was a terrible shock for everyone, especially for Nazia. She, the one that seemed the strongest of all, suddenly lost the meaning of her life. Nothing else interested her. Nazia told to everyone, "I'm leaving. I cannot live without him." She stopped eating, began to smoke, although she had never done this in her life. In other words, the woman did everything to die. The son of Malik Gabdullin, Batal, also died early, and also from a heart disease. Apparently, the disease was transmitted to him genetically. So there are no more successors of the glorious family. But the children and grandchildren of his daughter Maidan passed the memory of the great-grandfather from generation to another. One of the descendants is even named after him. There is an expression, "Халактын адамы," meaning a people's man, not someone who is known by everyone, but the one who has the best qualities of this people, which he represents. The one to whom people turn to. Of course, the whole Kazakhstan knew Malik Gabdullin mostly when he was alive. A lot of time has passed. He was a people's man. It imposed a great responsibility on him, and in conversations, and in speeches, and in media, everywhere, he fairly restrained. This was the fate of a soldier, citizen, and patriot, Malik Gabdullin. So many beautiful characteristics came together in one person: kindness and modesty, honesty and decency, unlimited courage. All his life, he was an example for everyone, people's pride, and he still remains to be so.